Hello. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Trader Chris here, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Pound USD leading up to next week. I'll be doing some sort of breakdown on what I anticipate for next week as it regards Pound USD. And yeah, let's just get straight to it. If I still have some time, I may look at Pound JPY, but my primary focus would be on Pound USD. So this is a weekly time frame on GBP and basically I still see that we are still maintaining some sort of bearish structure on the weekly time frame, where as long as price stays below this level of resistance, we are still kind of bearish, and safest and long-term plays for buys would be if price breaks and if price closes and holds support above basically 1.24. But the minute we are still bearish, and yes, we closed bullish last week, we could still pull back this dip and still be bearish overall. So in reality, I'm still holding a bearish sentiment, but doesn't mean we could not get some sort of buys next week as well. Another thing that is important to note is that next week, Wednesday, is the interest rate decision for the USD, and it is anticipated to increase by 0.75%. And if that is the case, you expect some strength in the dollar, which should weaken pound USD. And if we're pushing up already this week, leading up to next week, could it be some sort of pullback to get further sales, since it's kind of expected, at least for the Fed to do some sort of interest rate hike, knowing fully well that inflation is still very high. The last print was 9.1%, I think. So in summary, the fundamentals are still bearish. The technicals are still bearish on the weekly time frame. But I wouldn't ignore the fact that at this stage we have some sort of support on the weekly time frame. So we call it weekly support. And if you measure the range from where price is to the deepest pullback we can get on the weekly time frame is 267 pips, and to the downside from here as well would be 145 pips. So there is really a lot of range to play with, either to the upside or to the downside. But regardless, I will still be bearing in mind that as long as price stays below this resistance, GU is still fundamentally and technically bearish. So I would then move to the daily time frame at this point. So what do we have on the daily time frame? So this is that weekly resistance area where I mentioned that as long as price stays below, it's still in a bearish structure. And yeah, you can also see on the daily time frame that price is also struggling at this previous level of resistance. So in essence, price is basically in a range between this price point here and this price point here, and the range is 163 pips. So if, for instance, you want to take, if for instance I want to consider any sort of buys to this point, price needs to hold support above this level, because I would require support to hold, because we've seen the resistance form and we've seen a lot of rejections from here. So if price fails to hold support above this level, I wouldn't be considering buys at this price. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again. We are still bearish overall. We can still pull back to this point and still remain bearish, and there's a lot of pips between here and here. On the way up, it's clear that price is struggling at this level of resistance because of the fact that we've seen rejections from here. I don't think a breakout trade from here would be safe. It would be safe to see some sort of breakout, wait for some sort of support, at least on the 4-hour time frame, to confirm that it's not a fake out, then we have targets to ascertain and some entries to take for a trade to continue up. Yeah, so that would be the criteria for me to consider buys on pound USD as it is currently and leading up into next week. So if we then switch to the 4-hour time frame as well, we can then see that this is the 4-hour level that is holding everything to the upside, really. So we can further simplify this range to be between these price points, between here and here. Now, on the contrary for sales, since everything is still bearish, as long as we stay below this price point, I would believe that if we get a 4-hour candle closing bearish below here, I wouldn't be waiting for some sort of resistance or targets to be made, because in reality, I believe that this level is some sort of target on the 4-hour, on the daily time frame, where we are only pulling back at this point and we got stuck in a range. I think if we break the range to the downside, it would be safe to hope to get in on sales, in my opinion. Then you just need to watch this level on your way down, and this would be like a max target to the downside. So on the contrary, if I'm going to be taking sales, I wouldn't wait for targets to be made. If we can get a 4-hour candle closing bearish below this level of support, I think we have enough range to the downside, which is like 63 pips range. And then one could see what happens at this level of support on a weekly time frame. If we then continue to break lower, then we can ascertain further downside on GU. Basically, don't forget that there is a very important fundamental news coming out next week for the dollar, which is the interest rate decision. It's almost likely that there will be an increase in the interest rate. By how much, I don't know, but it's almost likely at this stage. So if that is the case, and if it is as expected, say maybe 0.75% as expected, then this push to the upside, I would then have been a liquidity grab to continue further. If there's a surprise where I think this is not possible, in my opinion, but if, for instance, it's below expectations, say there's just 0.5% increase in interest rates, then you just get some sort of whipsaw for price to recalibrate and then decide. Then the important thing at that stage would be the press release and the forward guidance from the Fed, really, on how they would continue to, on the speed of how they would be doing the interest rate going forward. So basically, to sum up, I think these are the two levels I'll be watching closely for trading next week. For buys, because of everything I've explained earlier, the weekly is bearish. I would need targets to be made, some sort of pullback to hold support before considering buys, really. For sales, if we can close below this level, then it would be safe to take sales. Another thing that would be very interesting to see is that if price closes above, holds support, then fails from resistance, then it would be a fake out from here. And since we are going down in any case, then one could possibly play the range from here to the downside. And the size of this range is 90 pips range to be, 90 pips range to, 90 pips range. So those are the three things I will be keeping in mind. And then you can then mark out these levels on your way up, such that you then be watching these levels for reaction or rejection. So say this is daily resistance. Daily resistance. Yeah, so if we then get this support above this level at 1.20328, then you need to watch this level on your way up, meaning you need to take profit at that point. and see if we get continuation really. Then the price action that prints at that point will determine the decision that will be made. But as it stands currently, we have created support on the weekly. It's not buys yet, in my opinion. If we hold support above this level, then buys could be taken in anticipation of retesting whatever high has been created, and to see if we get continuation to this point. If at any point we find ourselves trading in this area, I think buying or selling is a no-no. In fact, buying at this point is a no-no, because you would have enough opportunities to take the trade to this point, and buying at this point is a no-no. You want to wait for some sort of break above before continuation. I think that will be in 2 weeks' time or whatever. I don't expect us to go beyond this price next week, but anything can happen. What I'm just saying is, at this point, you want to chill out. It's a point where you don't want to take any trade. You want to see what price does first before determining what to do. And for the downside, if we break this support or get a fake card from the top, then sells all the way. I would be actively looking for sales and be on the lookout for buys based on the fundamentals we have for next week. So that's my thoughts on pound USD. Let me know what you think about everything I've said in the comment section, and I'll be glad to take your question and see if I can provide some sort of answers to them. Thank you and God bless.